started. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have a landscape education webinar focused on rainwater harvesting with our instructor, Chris Corvetti. My name is Samantha Vergara. I'm an admin analyst with the City of Milpitas, specializing in water conservation programs. And tonight's program was also brought to you by our co-sponsor, BOSCA, which stands for the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency. Just before we get started today, I'm going to go over some guidelines for participating in the webinar. First, all attendees are going to be muted by default. This is to reduce background noise during the presentation. And then we will be pausing periodically to take any questions. So if you have them, make sure you make note of them. And you can let us know of your questions in two ways. So during the presentation, you can type out your question into the Q&A box, and then we'll stop gradually to address anything that comes up. And then if you prefer to if you prefer to verbally ask your question, there will be an opportunity at the end of the presentation during our kind of designated Q&A where you can raise your hand to unmute yourself, and you can speak to us and ask your questions that way. And tonight's webinar is going to be recorded, so a recording link will be sent out to you in a couple of weeks once that's available, as long as the resources that are discussed today. And then, yeah, the Q&A button is down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, so you can click on that if you have any questions that come up. And then we're just going to do a really quick introduction of our co-sponsor today. Again, BOSCA stands for the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency, and it is a special district that represents 26 agencies, which include cities, water districts, water companies, and a university, all of whom purchase water wholesale from the San Francisco Regional Water System. And within the BOSCA member agencies, water is provided to about 1.8 million people and to over 40,000 businesses and community organizations all across Alameda, Santa Clara, and San Mateo County. In addition, BOSCA's main goal is to provide a high quality supply of water at a fair price to the BOSCA member agencies and their constituents. In addition to their main goal, BOSCA focuses a lot on water conservation, and they have a variety of different conservation programs, such as the landscape education program, which is how we're having this webinar today. And the main objective of BOSCA's water conservation program is to address water conservation through the lens of outdoor water use. Outdoor water use represents the single largest untapped opportunity for conservation within the BOSCA service area. And we look to conserve water outdoors through the reduction of water by using water efficient plants and innovative techniques to reduce irrigation. And then in addition to the landscape education program, there are several different rebates and incentives that are available to residents that are living within the BOSCA region. For example, they have the Lawn Be Gone lawn conversion program, where you could get up to $4 per square foot for replacing traditional turf with drought-tolerant plants and landscape materials such as mulch. And very relevant to today's topic, there's also rebates available to install rain barrels, which you can use to capture rain as it comes down and save that for later use. Other program offerings also include the Smart Controller Rebate and Installation Program. Through this program, you can get a rebate for putting in a smart irrigation controller, which would allow you to monitor your irrigation, control it remotely. And then there's also rebates available for installation of rain gardens. And you could get up to $300 back for putting one in. And then In addition, there's also rebates that are available to residents in Santa Clara County through Valley Water's rebate programs. Valley Water offers a lot of the similar rebates to what Bosca offers. And you can visit watersavings.org for more information and to find rebate rates that are specific to your service area. And then this is just a quick little slide with some Milpitas specific rebates. So if you are a resident in the city of Milpitas, we offer you rebates, landscape rebates through Valley Water. And some of these rebates include up to $4 back for switching out turf to drought tolerant plants. We also have rebates to get up to $70 back per rain barrel that's installed. And we have a rain garden conversion program where you can get up to $600 for installing a rain garden on your property. In addition, we also offer up to $400 for Milpitas residents that opt to install a gray water system. Gray water systems allow you to divert some of your laundry wash water over to your landscape so that way you don't have to run drinking water to your plants. In addition, we also have a couple of free offerings, such as the residential and commercial irrigation surveys, in which we'll have a trained irrigation professional come out to your property to assess your current irrigation habits, make recommendations, and let you know if there are any adjustments that need to be made to your irrigation to conserve water. We also offer free conservation programs through Valley Water's online shopping cart, and you can find all of this information and more at savewatermilpitas.org. And if you're looking for additional ways to save water in Milpitas, we highly recommend that you sign up for the WaterSmart customer portal. This customer portal connects to your smart AMI water meter, and it provides you with near real-time water use information. It's a really great tool for investigating any high water bills that come in. You can also use it to check if you have any potential leaks at your house or check out any unusual water use. And then we also have an ongoing water waste program in which you can call into our water conservation hotline or submit a service request through our My Milpitas app to let us know of any water waste that you observe around the city. Examples of water waste include things like running broken sprinklers, watering gardens or turf in the middle of the day, watering during rain, etc. And again, you can find more information on water waste restrictions at savewatermilpitas.org. All right, and then this is just another slide with some additional links that you might find helpful if you're living in Santa Clara County and you're looking for landscape resources, or again, looking for some of those rebates that are available through Valley Water. You can also report water waste that you observe in Santa Clara County to waterwise at valleywater.org, and they will investigate or forward that water waste case over to the correct jurisdiction. All right, and then here's some more information, contact information for the Valley Water Rebate Program. And then these links will be sent out in the follow-up email that I provide to you in about a week or so. And if you enjoyed tonight's presentation, we do have quite a few other landscape education classes coming up. As you can see, we have quite a couple that are coming up in the next week. And I know that we have a couple more, I believe, through November and maybe even up to December. If you're interested in signing up for one of these, you can visit Bosca's website, bosca.org/conserve/program/classes, and you'll be able to register for the classes there and receive a Zoom link once the class starts. And then finally, this is another great resource if you're looking to learn more about sustainable landscaping. This is bayareagardening.org. I'll include a link to this with the other resources that come up today. And with that, I'm just going to read off a quick little bio about our instructor today, Chris Corvetti. Chris moved to California upon completion of 2 years of Peace Corps service in Mongolia, where she first experienced water scarcity. As a member of the Watershed Stewards AmeriCorps program, Chris delved into issues surrounding water conservation specific to the Bay Area. Since the end of her AmeriCorps service in 2017, Chris has worked with numerous local nonprofits and municipalities to install rainwater harvesting systems throughout the Bay Area. And with that, I will pass off to Chris and we'll get started with the presentation.
Thank you so much, Samantha.
Mhm.
Is my screen showing up okay?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so we are here to talk about rainwater harvesting. And the fact that you guys are already here with me means you probably know a little bit about it, but we're definitely going to expand on your knowledge tonight. And if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A. I'll answer them as I'm going along, and at the end we can do more in-depth questions as well. Um, you guys probably know a lot of the benefits of rainwater harvesting already. You know that you can reduce your use of municipal water and thus lower your water bill. It's going to help reduce the moisture around your building. You can add aesthetic value depending on how you design your system. It can be really beautiful. It requires less maintenance than a traditional system. And it's also just going to be healthier for nature and for your plants and your local birds and insects. It's also going to help reduce polluted runoff, which will improve quality in the creeks and make it healthier for larger animals that we may not think about when we're thinking about our own backyard. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that first. One of the issues that we have here in the Bay Area is a lot of hardscape. So it's a lot of areas where we have paved roads, we have houses, we have shopping centers, we have parking lots, and all of those areas that are hardscapes are areas where the water can't just soak into the ground the way it would have before we built in our large city in the area. And what that means is all of our water can run into our storm drains. And as that water is flowing down the street, especially you'll notice it, especially the first couple storms of the year where we haven't had a lot of rain and a lot of dust and dirt have built up on the roads, you'll notice that water starts running down the streets and the sidewalks, and it picks up a lot of stuff with it. It's picking up pet waste, fertilizers, oils, detergents, chemicals, litters, all sorts of stuff that is on our roads and our walkways just from normal life. And one of the ways that we can reduce the amount of that goes into our creek is by reducing the amount of water that's carrying it into the creek. So, a lot of people don't realize that our storm drains actually drain directly into our creeks or into the bay. As you can see in this wonderful little diagram, um, we do have a wastewater treatment plant, that all of our household waste goes into. So that's your sinks, your toilets, your showers. That goes through, that gets treated. By the time that's released back out into the bay, it's already clean. But all of our storm drains don't have any sort of treatment plant. There is no way for us to treat all that water that's coming through the storm drains. They all run directly from the street into our creeks, and they can carry with it all of these pollutants. So one of the things that you can do is called slow it, spread it, sink it. Slow it, spread it, and sink it refers to slowing our stormwater down and spreading it out so it has a chance to sink into the ground, to nourish our plants and refill the aquifer. The more water that we can prevent from running over our man-made hardscape, the healthier our local creeks and ecosystems will be. That seems pretty straightforward, right? So let's talk about some ways that rainwater harvesting can help slow it, spread it, and sink it. There's a couple different types of rainwater harvesting. We're gonna really focus today on rain barrels and rain gardens, but one of the things I don't want to leave out is permeable pavement. This is really great if you guys are thinking about redoing your driveway or building something new or changing up your walkways around your house, or if you have where you work is considering doing it. This is something to really consider. Permeable paving is a great way to reduce the amount of hardscape and the amount of water that actually runs off into our streets and into our storm drains. And there is something really cool now called porous cement, which can be poured as a slab or purchased as pavers. And you'll see that in a lot of our city parks. And Milpitas has a lot of city parks where the walkways in the parks are done with this porous cement. So when it rains, the water actually soaks through that cement and straight into the ground instead of acting like a traditional cement or a black-topped area where it's going to run off. But that may not be the most economical thing to do on your own home. So there are ways where you can either use pavers with built-in spacing to allow the water to soak in, or use non-permeable pavers and create spacing between them. So you'll see if you're driving around town, you'll see some people have driveways that are sections of concrete with 3 inches in between them. That allows the water to have a spot to soak in and creates the effect of the permeable paving or the porous cement without it being permeable pavers. So great option. We're going to delve a little bit deeper into both rain gardens and rain barrels. But before we get there, I'm going to answer some questions before you even have a chance to ask them. These are the questions I get all the time. Is there enough rain? We live in the Bay Area. We get a lot less rain in the Bay Area than in other parts of the country. And so the direct answer is actually there is. Even though we get about half the average for the US, 1,000 square foot roof can capture over 600 gallons of rainwater from 1 inch of rain. So Milpitas gets about 17 inches a year. And what that translates to, sorry, my slide is has Menlo Park in here, which gets about 20 inches a year. Milpitas gets a little bit less than Menlo Park, just because of where the mountains are and the area in the bay. But we're still looking at 1,000 square foot roof getting over 10,000 gallons of water a year. So that is a lot of water for your overall harvesting potential of your roof. And you can use this equation. It's the size of your roof times the amount of rain. So an average rain amount is maybe a 1/2 inch. And then this conversion factor of 0.62 is going to give you your potential harvesting. Now, even in just a 1/2 inch storm, 1,000 square foot roof is getting over 300 gallons of rain. And what that means is when you're sizing your system and you say, I've got 1,000 square foot roof, I'm going to put a 50-gallon rain barrel on it. It's probably going to fill every time it rains, and you're going to want to use that in between. And you may decide you actually want to go a little bit bigger. But if you have 1,000 square foot roof and you say, I want to put a 5,000-gallon tank on there, it's never going to fill up. You would never be using that water in between storms. You really want to be able to use that water in between storms. So even if your harvesting potential is 300 gallons in a 1/2 inch of rain, you may only want to put a 200-gallon system on that downspout and maybe put some other systems on other downspouts. You don't want to actually have that full amount. You want to be able to fill the system fully and use it so the water replenishes with each storm. With the different roof types, this is the other question I get all the time, is I have this type of roof. Can I install a rain barrel or a rain garden off of it? Almost all roof types are eligible. One of the things you want to avoid is any sort of galvanized or untreated metal. Obviously, you don't want those metal oxides, the rust, to get into your water, because when we put in a water system, we're concentrating the water that's coming off of the roof, and we want to make sure that we aren't putting anything concentrated into the ground that may have been spread out a little bit more. So we want to make sure that we are, thinking about this as we're putting in the system. So we want to avoid anything that's galvanized or untreated for metal. We want to avoid any treated wood cedar shake shingles. So those are the big wooden shakes. Those used to be really common in the Bay Area. I'm seeing less and less of them these days. They're pretty expensive to replace now. I know when we replaced our roof a few years ago, we got rid of our shakes and put asphalt shingles on because it was significantly cheaper. Um, if you have cedar shakes, the natural oil in the cedar isn't actually an issue, but if you treat that roof regularly, so you pay someone to get up there and spray it with an algicide or an herbicide, you don't want to be capturing that because that's going to capture and concentrate that herbicide. And, their cedar is naturally wonderful. You really don't need to be treating it anyway, but you'll know if you are treating it and don't connect that to a rain barrel system. Solar panels or solar shingles or generally have a glass or laminate on the top that's going to be completely fine. Most flat roofs are fine. Some older flat roofs have asbestos or other things they're made of. So if you don't know what the roof's made of, do your research before connecting. Most modern flat roofs are rubber or foam, and they're completely fine to capture off of. They don't capture quite as efficiently as a sloped roof, though. Ceramic or clay are going to be fine. And asphalt shingles are going to be completely fine, but you do want to disconnect your system if you are getting a new asphalt shingle roof. The first couple of storms with a new roof, it's going to shed. And basically the shingles, just the asphalt on them it's just sloughing off the excess. And so you'll see a lot of that kind of building up around your downspouts. And I recommend putting like screens on the bottom so you can kind of capture that. But when you get a new roof, you just want to disconnect your rainwater harvesting system for a few storms and let that shed and capture that and get rid of it. And then you'll be able to start capturing off of your asphalt shingle. Um, the asphalt is, I've been assured is inert, so it's not going to hurt anything. But you want to just put screens and filters, which we're going to talk about later. They're required by law on all of your harvesting systems, so they're not actually going to go into your system anyway. But when you put the new one on, the glue and everything is new. You just want to let that shed without collecting it for the first couple of storms. Rubber shingles are safe to harvest off of, as are cement. Cement roofs can also shed a little bit when you first put them on. So leaving that disconnected for a couple of rains is not a bad idea. Okay, so rain barrels are what most people think about when they're thinking about what rainwater harvesting. That is the first thing that comes to mind for most people is a rain barrel. And they're a very basic concept. You hook them up to a downspout and they catch the water and they hold the water and then you use that water instead of your municipal water. And however big your rain barrel is, that amount of water isn't running off into the storm drain. So sounds pretty basic, right? We're going to talk about how easy it is to set up and how simple it is to put these on your home. The next question I get all the time, do I need a permit to put a rain barrel on? Almost always no. So the main points are if you're going to be fully exterior to a single family home, you do not need a permit. If you want to install one of these on an apartment complex, you may need a permit. If you want to install one of these at an office building, you may need a permit. There are very specific criteria. You would have to reach out to the city to find out in those instances whether or not you would. But if you are installing to a single family home and you are keeping it under 360 gallons on a single system, you do not need a permit. That's going to cover most people what they're trying to do on their home. Now, if you want to put 355 gallons on every single one of your downspouts, and that's fine. Those are each considered separate systems. So you still don't need a permit. As long as you don't run a pipe or a hose or anything connecting those separate setups of 355 gallons, they stay separate. and the water doesn't spread between them, you still don't need a permit. Now, as long as you're not connecting anything electrical and you're not connecting any water to make it up from usable water, and you are irrigating only with drip irrigation, that 360 gallon jumps all the way up to 5,000 gallons, like the biggest size tank you could possibly imagine, which really wouldn't fit on any property in the Bay Area, is fine as long as you're meeting these criteria. If you want to install a below ground system, something that's buried or connect to interior plumbing, you're definitely going to need a permit. Those always need a permit. So most systems and the ones we're going to talk about today, fit the no permit needed requirement. And also, your rainwater is going to be non-potable. It's not drinkable. This is for your plants. This is for making a healthier ecosystem. This is not water that we're going to be drinking. Um, Everyone hears me say that and says, "Oh, but why not? Can I do it?" Yes, there are ways to do this. There are a lot of countries that do this. There's a lot of people living in the US that use their rainwater for drinking. They have to treat it. It is not safe to drink without treatment. So we're not going to talk about using it for drinking. We're only going to talk about using it for plants today. When you're choosing your system, you want to do that equation we already looked at, where we're looking at the harvesting potential. You want to think about your number of downspouts, how much room you have to install, how you're going to use the water, where you're going to have the water drain or overflow, and you want to think about what it looks like. This barrel here in this picture, I find very attractive. I would love to have that on my front of my house. Unfortunately, I can't draw or paint, and I would not be able to make my barrels look like that. So I have my barrels around the side of the house where my neighbors don't have to look at them. So you just kind of want to think about what works well for you. And, if you have a friend who's an artist or if you're an artist, then you could do something really beautiful right in front of the house or have it blend into the landscape. There are also kits that look like rocks and other ones I'll show you later on that are really great for blending in with your landscaping. So we've already kind of discussed how simple a rain barrel system is. So we're going to run through it real quick. It rains and the water comes in the top. We're going to call that the inflow. It's where the water flows in. At the top, we have a screen. The screen is a legal requirement for any rainwater harvesting system. What this means is the state of California says, we do not want you taking a garbage can, we don't want you taking a bucket, we don't want you taking anything and putting it under your downspout and catching water and leaving it sitting there. And the reason for that is fairly simple. Any water sitting around is going to start breeding mosquitoes or enticing other pests. You're going to get raccoons or rats cleaning in it, swimming it, drinking in it. It's going to get really nasty really fast. So we put a screen on there that keeps the bigger debris out. It also keeps any critters out as well as insects. So screen anywhere that the system's open. So that also includes the overflow on the left side. So the water comes in, goes through the screen into the tank. Once the tank fills up, the water runs out and overflow, and then that overflow runs wherever you set it to run. Now, with that, it has to drain on your own property. You can't decide to flood out your neighbor. So you need to make sure that overflow is draining fully on your property and any output of it is at least 3 feet from the property line. If you choose to, you can add strapping. I do all my installations are usually on public sites, schools, churches, community buildings. So I always strap. This particular barrel is in Gamble Gardens in Palo Alto. As you can see, I have it strapped in 4 locations, and it's strapped to a very sturdy fence that provides earthquake proofing and stability should any, let's face it, it's always the adults, not the kids, decide to try to climb on it. So that way it's totally secure. You can optionally add a depth gauge to see how full your barrel is. There is one on the top of this tank right there, but it's completely optional. If you just tap the side of your tank, you can listen to it and it'll go from a very solid thunk thunk to a very hollow sound where it goes from full to empty. And that'll give you an idea of how full your barrel is. All rain barrels are designed to prevent UV from going in them, so you're not going to be able to see the water in them easily because we have all of the holes are filled to keep the critters out. The tank is designed not to let the UV light in because we don't want to grow any algae. So you're going to use your ears to figure out how deep it is, or you can put a gauge on the top. Most depth gauges are just a percentage, so you can see in this one, the red is empty, the green is full. This tank is pegged fully on the green, so it's completely full then, but it would should just show you if an arrow came out somewhere else, it would just show you the percentage that it was full, not an actual gallon amount. You would still have to figure that out yourselves. For your output, you can set it up in many different ways. I think I've got a slide coming up that'll look at that a little bit more closely. So we've already talked about inflow a bit. We need to have the screening. And you do have an option to divert all the water in a downspout. So that's cutting your downspout and putting all the water into the barrel. Or there are these partial diverters like this bottom picture. And the way they work, the water flows down the inside of the pipe and then it comes in and fills the rain barrel. Once the rain barrel's filled, the water flows back out the same pipe. It basically fills that whole thing, runs up and over and down the center to continue back down your downspout. If you have a French drain already installed, these are a really great way to just pull out the amount of water that's in your rain barrels and let the rest of the water continue to run into your French drain. Any of your overflow designs needs to be high on the barrel because the barrel's not going to fill above that overflow. That's where it's going to stop filling. So you want to put your overflow as high up on the barrel as possible. For the output, these are some slightly better pictures than the last one. If you want to use drip irrigation or soaker hoses, you're going to want to put a filter on it because even with all of our screens, you're going to have fine sediment, you're going to have pollen and other stuff that's going to get in the tank, and you don't want that to clog up your irrigation hoses. So you'll install a filter. Both of these pictures have the filter on it. You can install timers with any gravity fed system. So a system with no pump on it, you're going to need what's called a gravity fed timer or a zero pressure timer. I will send a link to that in the follow-up email. I'll include that in the links. There's different ones that work well, but any ones that are expecting the pressure, they don't open quite right and they don't work as well with the drip irrigation for the rain barrel. I do all my systems with gravity. I don't put a pump on them. You can install a pump. If you're going to do a permanent pump, it's going to require a permit. If you're going to do a temporary pump so you can go out and just run the hose and then remove the pump again, you do not need a permit for that. But anytime you're going to hardwire one in, you need a permit. If you want to get a little bit bigger in your rain barrels, you have a couple of options. One is a cistern, which is anything over 200 gallons is considered a cistern. So that picture that I showed you before from Gamble Gardens is actually a cistern. It's 265 gallons. And we also have a 500-gallon one here at the Peninsula Conservation Center in Palo Alto. This one you can see, this picture is actually when we were in the middle of installing it. So the overflow is not yet plumbed. It's just kind of sticking out there. If you were to see it today, there's actually a pipe that runs out down the side and all the way out to the garden. Cisterns allow you to capture more water, so they'll last longer in the dry season. You'll also get higher pressure because you have more water in the tank. But if you're gonna use a cistern, I really recommend doing a concrete pad. Um, Water is really heavy, over 8 pounds per gallon. So when this 500-gallon tank is full, it's more than 2 tons. And you don't want that sitting on dirt where it may not be totally level. You want to do a concrete pad for that. With barrels, we often will just dig out level and then put gravel in to make a nice sturdy base for it. With the cisterns, I recommend doing a full concrete pad. If you want that larger capacity, but you're not ready to get a cistern, you can do something called daisy chaining. And you can easily add extra barrels on. It gives you the higher pressure and the larger capacity with using smaller tanks. So these are daisy chained at the bottom. So that means as the water comes into one, it will flow across and fill both barrels simultaneously. There are also ways that you can daisy chain at the top of a barrel, which means the first barrel will have to fill completely and then overflow into the second barrel. So you can decide if you want them to all fill simultaneously or if you want them to fill in series. You can find your aesthetic desire with different types of barrels. These are some food grade barrels. So all these are recycled barrels. They have the FDA only allows food grade barrels to be used once for their food item, be it oil or the ones on the blue ones had Coca-Cola and Fanta syrup in them. And so when we got them, they still smelled like you were walking into a soda shop, um, which doesn't hurt the plants. The plants are okay with a little extra sugar, and it's completely diluted once we get the water in them. But those barrels have served their purpose. They are no longer food grade after their first use. So this is a great way to recycle them. You can also buy barrels that are specifically designed to be rain barrels. Here are some examples. I have been informed that the raindrop box is no longer available. I'm sorry, I still have it on my slide. I just think it's really pretty. But you can get various different styles online. There are ones like the Earth-Minded Rain Station or the Ivy that have the ability to become a planter on top, so you can plant flowers in the top of them. And then you still have the 50 gallons underneath. Currently, Flows to Bay is doing their discounted barrel sale. So if you are interested in a 50-gallon barrel, they're selling the Ivy barrels for $85 a barrel. I believe they usually run 150 or 125, so it's a good discount. And it'll be almost fully covered by the rebate. You can purchase up to two. The pickup dates, I believe, are November 1st and November 9th, but we'll check on the Flows to Bay website and I'll give that link at the end of the presentation as well. They only do that once a year, and so it's a great time to get your barrels. Maintaining barrels is pretty straightforward. Clean your gutters. You should be doing this anyway, but if you have a rain barrel on it, the plumbing code requires that you clean it twice a year. The state of California requires twice a year if you're hooked up to a rain barrel system. Check and empty any leaf eaters or screens on your barrels at least 4 times a year, so every 3 months. Again, that is a state of California requirement. Empty and clean your first flush diverter if you have one. We didn't talk about a first flush diverter. It's something you would have if you're in a very dusty area. That needs to be done at least twice a year. The state of California says you must visually inspect all valves and components once a year. Hopefully you're walking by your barrel more than once a year and you're able to look at it and say, oh yeah, they're still there. They look good. But that's just a visual inspection's required. And then every 5 years, you should really make sure you've used all that water because it's going to start to smell a little bit. It'll get a little anaerobic. But really you should be using it after every storm. I like to take a hose at the end of summer when once my barrel's like completely done. I'll take a hose and flush out the barrel and then use that water in my garden since I would have, watered the garden anyway. I just use it to rinse out my barrel before watering the garden with it. But I recommend doing that at least every 5 years too. And you want to use that water. Use it regularly, emptying it between storms. You can use it in many different ways, and one of my favorite ways to use it is connecting it to a rain garden. So, a rain garden is, if anyone has any questions about barrels, go ahead and type those in now, or we'll get back to them after talking about rain gardens. But don't be shy if you have any questions. I know this is a lot of information all at once. A rain garden is really cool. It is also rainwater harvesting. It does not always involve a barrel, but it can be connected to a barrel. You can see in this case, there's a barrel here that connects into this rain garden. And this picture was taken like the day we planted the rain garden. So these little juncus are all tiny and babies, and you can't even really see some of the other plants we put in. They're really young. And so this will get much bigger, and also some pictures. I believe later on I have some of other gardens when they're a little more mature. But a rain garden is specifically designed to capture, store, and infiltrate the rainwater. So allows a lot more water to soak into the ground compared to conventional lawn or garden. They're typically designed with native soil either removed or amended. And the native plants require less maintenance, so it makes it a little bit easier to maintain. It's not actually a pond feature. As you can see in this picture, it looks like a dry rock garden. It will pond temporarily during the rain, but that water's not supposed to stay there. So it's actually dry most of the time. So this is the anatomy of a traditional rain garden. You can see we've got kind of 3 layers here. In the bottom, we have our drainage rock. In the middle, we have our bioswale soil. And on the top, in this picture, we have river rocks. This can be done with just the bioswale soil and mulch if you don't want to put in drainage rock. The more clay you have in the soil, the more I recommend the drainage rock. It's going to really help it go in more. And I will send in the and I may talk about it at the end if we have time, ways to test your soil for how much clay you have in it, but I'll send that in the handouts as well. But as you can see, this is not just a garden that you're planting native plants in. This is something that you've dug out, and you've dug it out significantly. It's got to be dug out sorry, anywhere from 12 to 24 inches to qualify for a rain garden. We're going to look at the rebate qualifications in a minute. But when you're designing your rain garden, you really want to think about how much water that garden's going to have to handle, and make sure that you're sizing it appropriately to be able to handle all the extra water. You want to avoid any large trees or existing roots so that you're not hurting those existing trees during your digging process. You can shape your swale around them, and it is okay if the roots from the trees kind of are coming out towards your rain garden because they'll get water from it, but you really don't want to be flooding roots that, you don't want to be too close to the tree and hurting them and changing, the way they've lived for a long time. So definitely avoiding any large trees. You need to choose which materials appeal to you, if you like the way the cobbles look or if you like the way the mulch looks, and whether or not you want the drainage rock in, and then choosing your native plants. This garden is in Bull Park in Palo Alto, and the swale, the dugout part, goes kind of like this and makes a big loop around here. And prior to installing this garden, this bike path would flood almost every rainstorm. So the city of Palo Alto reached out to us and said, we need a solution to this. And we said, great, we'd love to not have lawn there. So they agreed to let us remove their lawn. They helped us dig out the swale. And we installed a very traditional rain garden with the drainage rock, the bioswale soil, and then cobbles. Now, our native plants are so happy there, you can barely even see the cobbles. But if you look right here, you can see them a little bit. Um, so we probably could have put mulch there just as easily, and it wouldn't have changed the aesthetics. And we did do mulch on the edge closest to the bike path in case a biker swerved to avoid something. We didn't want them to end up in cobbles. But we were worried because there is a drainage grate. It's a little hard to see in the picture, but it's right here. We didn't want our mulch to float up during a really bad flooding event. We didn't want it to float up and into the drainage grate. So we put cobbles just to be more secure there, and it's worked very well at that site. Um, Sizing your garden and your barrels as well depends on how many downspouts you plan to divert. So this Santa Clara Valley Water has this picture, which is really wonderful. And this shows what the roof area would be if you were diverting two downspouts. So we got one downspout here and one here. And then all of this dotted red line shows that roof area that would cover. But if you decided you didn't want to do this downspout, you only wanted to do that one, then your roof area would only be this part. You wouldn't measure the whole roof. So that would be for your harvesting potential. So if for some reason you couldn't install a bigger rain garden, or you needed to whatever, or you couldn't dig to connect this other downspout, you would just calculate with the smaller roof amount for your rain garden or your rain barrel. Sometimes it's hard to connect your rain barrels together, so you would only be calculating per rain barrel, but you may put a rain barrel on both downspouts and connect both rain barrels into the rain garden. So you may have a different calculation for your rain barrel than you have for your rain garden. Okay, so now when you are locating your rain garden, you want to be at least 10 feet away from the foundation, 3 feet away from your property line, because we want to make sure all that water is on our property and we're not flooding our neighbors, no matter how frustrating they can be. We want to check for buried utilities. You want to be at least 5 feet horizontally and 1 foot vertical from any utilities. You can call 811, they'll come out and mark them all for you. If you have a septic system instead of a sewer system, you already know this, I'm sure, but do not put this over your septic. We don't want to put extra water into a septic system. We want that to function without the extra water. So you want to make sure, again, you're 5 feet away from any septic system. If your property is sloped, you can use the excavated soil to create a berm to get that 12 to 24 inches. As you can see in this picture, with the green line being the original slope and the red line being our new landscaping. So you can create that depth without, doing a massive amount of digging if you have a little bit of a slope. For the requirements for rebate, we are looking at using a garden soil mix. So you are not required to use the drainage rock, but you are required to use the garden soil mix. Linkso or Mountain View Garden Center or some of the other garden centers in the area sell what they call a bioswale soil, and it is a sandier soil. Now, depending on how much clay is in your soil, you'll mix a ratio of this sandy soil in with your own soil. Most of the Bay Area has a little bit of clay soil, so I really recommend going about 50-50 with this bioswale soil, and that creates a really rich mixture that works and drains very well for a rain garden. This requires either the mulch or the cobbles on top. You need to have some sort of erosion protection where the water comes in. Now, this picture shows your water very conveniently flowing across your yard and into your bioswale. I've never had water flow that successfully for me over a lawn. So it's a very idealistic picture. you're going to create either bury a pipe into the garden or create a trench that is cobble lined to bring that water into the rain garden. You can't just magically expect the water to flow 10 feet exactly where you want it to unless you're perfectly downhill from the house. So you're going to create that path to force that water to do what you want. We do, for any of the rebates, you are required to use native plants for your rain garden. I also recommend it. They're just going to be happier and healthier going from flooding to dry and flooding to dry and then really dry over the summer, where once they're established and they're a year or so old, you won't need to water them in the summer, even in our crazy heat we've had. These are some of my favorite plants. I'm also gonna send you the Bosca plant list, so check that out. It's a very comprehensive plant list. So there is a tab that says rain garden, and you can go over and sort by rain garden and see all the ones that they say yes to for the rain garden. The other question I get all the time is, can I add edible plants to my rain garden? And the direct answer is no, not in the rain garden. But if you want to put them around your rain garden on the berm, then you can go ahead and do that because that's outside the rain garden and just on the berm. But you really want to avoid anything that's going to be sitting on the ground. Because, keep in mind, we are slightly concentrating some of the stuff from our roof, all the things when we have a forest fire, we get ash from not just trees, but other chemicals and things that hits our roof. And we get bird poop and we get other stuff. And that all kind of concentrates in our rainwater harvesting systems. So it's not just, I'm not just saying because of acid rain or because the rain's hitting it, but because we're actually concentrating that water and feeding it into our plants. You want to avoid anything that has a lot of uptake or that is grown directly in the ground, like carrots or potatoes, or anything that's really leafy, like celery. Um, Things that grow really, really well with rainwater are vining veggies, your tomatoes, your cucumbers, your beans, your peppers, because you're going to water them at the root. You're not watering the fruit, you're watering the roots, and the plant filters everything out, and they're extremely healthy. Any bushy berries, taller bushy herbs or veggies, any citrus trees, any stone fruit trees, those are all going to be really, really happy watered with rainwater. Maintaining your garden's pretty straightforward. Irrigate it during the dry months, especially when they're getting established. Weed it as needed. One of the things that's kind of unique to a rain garden versus a standard garden is replacing the mulch. You want to keep your mulch at least 3 inches thick. And you want to mulch with something that's a little heavier, like composted mulch or larger hardwood mulch, so that it doesn't float away. So that'll get replaced, maybe once a year or every other year. And you can get arbor mulch from any tree company, they'll drop it off for free. It's not always the cleanest or the nicest looking though, because sometimes it has leaves and other stuff in it. But you can also go to Linkso or any garden center and get really clean mulch. If you're gonna buy it from a big box store or hardware store, I do recommend using what they call a natural mulch and avoiding any of the colored mulches. The colors that are the ones that are dyed mulch, they'll say on there, all natural dyes, etc. What they don't say is that the wood they use is often ground up pressure treated wood or leftover dimensional lumber or other things that have other chemicals in them. So the chemicals we're worried about aren't actually in the dyes, they're in the wood themselves. So I would recommend avoiding that colored mulch that you can get at the hardware stores, and going with a more natural mulch. Any areas of erosion should be, repaired. And obviously we want to avoid any synthetic fertilizers or herbicides. If you do have any ponding that lasts for more than 3 days, something's going on. You want to make sure you make adjustments to your rain garden so that it is draining properly. That may mean you didn't go deep enough or you need to make it a little bit bigger. And as with the rain barrels, you need to clean your gutters every 6 months. So I know this was a lot of information. Um, feel free to ask some questions. And these are some of the resources that we're going to send to you. And there will be some little quick reference guides in a PDF form on the email that Samantha's going to send in a week or so.
Oh, awesome. Thanks so much, Chris. That was a really great presentation. It's
I
always
know it
really
was a
good.
lot of information in a short amount of time.
That's okay. It's a lot of really great information. And yeah, as Chris said, I will be following up with everyone who has attended today. And well, for those who registered and were not able to attend, they'll also get a link to this recording and then some of the quick guides that you mentioned, as well as some of the links to some of the resources you mentioned today as well. And then with that, I didn't see any questions come up through the Q&A. There was one that was addressed, but if anyone would like to um, go ahead and ask a question, maybe verbally, that would be the chance to raise your hand, and then we'll allow you to unmute yourself. Um, or you can continue to type into the chat, and then we can read it out this way. Um, And then I think the chat is disabled, so any questions should be coming through Q&A, not any other boxes.
Thank you for joining us. Someone wrote a thank you very much. We appreciate the feedback and thanks for joining us tonight.
Yep. Thanks, Lucy.
And Samantha, I know I put the Flows to Bay
Mhm.
email on the, oops, that was a bad circle, but I
That's
know I
okay.
put the Flows to Bay website on the follow-up resources.
Mhm.
Um, but they have they are doing their sale right now and they have a limited number of barrels that they'll sell for that reduced rate.
Mhm.
Um, let me see if I can put this in the chat. Let me see if I can find it right now and put it in for
Yeah, and I'll try to get that. Do you know the duration of the sale? I'll try to get the email out as soon as we get the recording link.
it's very limited.
Mhm.
And they need to be picked up either in November. I'm opening the website right now.
Mhm.
Um uh I don't know how to share this with people though. Let's try this. Um so I just put it in the chat. I don't know if everyone can see the chat.
I got it. I believe it. I believe we're able to message out to everyone, but let me just take this link as well. In case.
So pickups are November 1st and November 8th, but they must be pre-ordered.
Mhm.
The November 1st is in Daly City and the November 8th is in Half Moon Bay. So they need to be pre-ordered. And these are for 50 gallon barrels, which are eligible. They're going to be cost $85 a barrel, but they're eligible for if you're in Milpitas for the $70 rebate, other cities have different rebates, anywhere from $50 to $100
Mhm.
per barrel. So that means that, people right now have the opportunity to get these barrels from anywhere from, $15 to free with the rebate. And these IV barrels come with all the connection parts in them. So everything is included.
Perfect. All right. Yeah, I'll include this in the email, and then yeah, I'm assuming this is just going to be while supplies last. So if they sell out before
Yeah,
the email comes
and they
in,
have the last couple of years they have sold out very quickly.
okay.
And
I
they only do it
anticipate,
once a year. So
yeah, I anticipate the email will probably come out within the next week or so. Just really depending on like when we have access to the Zoom recording. But I should get everything. Everything should be ready, and then the Zoom link is the one that we're kind of waiting on. So, okay, I'll include this in that follow up as well. Yeah.
okay, well, thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Thank you all for joining. Have a great night. Thanks. Whoops, sorry, I was just doing one quick check for any more questions, but if that was all, I can go ahead and end it here. Thanks so much, Chris, for your time, and then thank you everyone for joining. Resources will be provided soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice night.